Rick, the Batman GM, and once again, working on this Saturday morning. I am working on some videos for the upcoming week, and as always, it's always been a pleasure to do these things. I've been very honored and pleased that I was able to discover this technology and figure out ways to revitalize both my interest in our gaming hobby, to share my love for the hobby, and to share my collection such that it is. I don't have the big, huge, elaborate, modern collection that a lot of you do. I kind of dropped out of the scene for a better part of a decade. It's personal things, and not that I wasn't gaming. I was. It's just I didn't invest, and I didn't add, and I didn't become. There was a point in the 90s where I was so obsessed with online gaming that it became very detrimental to my world, my personal life, and my social life, and my existence at the time. I became very isolated, and some severe depression set in, and there were some other issues that cropped up because of that. And a lot of people I cared about, paid a little bit of the price that because of my foolish stupidity. That's neither here nor there. I'm not going into that. I've been working hard the past few years to fix some mistakes of the past and to create a better life for my wife and I. I didn't do right by anybody in my earlier years. I had a couple of addictions that were very self-destructive as well, and it fed into all this stuff, led up to some pretty bad, dark points. So, that's not what we're here about. It's not what we're here about. What we're here about is wishes. Sometimes we all wish we could reset life. If I knew then what I know now, how much things would be different. And just take a moment and think about that. We take for a lot of little things in our lives for granted until you don't have them. We take our loved ones for granted until they're gone, and they don't have to die to be gone. They can leave, they can disown you, they can move to the other side of the earth and become pretty much a non-entity for you, and that can be their choice. It can be your choice. It can be a choice that you don't realize you make. Take advantage of those that you care about, and let them know. Take advantage of the time that you have. Spend time with them. Get to know them. Try to make sure to remind yourself just what's really important in the world and what matters and what doesn't matter, because one day they're gone. The next day, one day they're here, the next day they're gone. Things. I've seen too many people become obsessed with things. I was one of those people too, from a different perspective. I was spending $50 to $100 a week on game material at the time, which is one of the reasons I have a large collection. And I was also spending, probably the similar amount on substances that were very detrimental to me. And I couldn't break the habit. It took a real tragic situation and to force me to break from both of them and to reprioritize, and it took me years to get back to that point. So some of you may have seen in my personal entries on Facebook, the wife and I are house hunting. If somebody had told me a year ago or 6 years ago I would own a home, I would have just yeah, right. I don't have that kind of luck. I'm an educated person. I have a diploma, a degree from a community college. It's not some grand university, but it's still it's still educated. I still have an associate of applied sciences degree, and I'm a smart individual, except I'm my own worst enemy. I do not believe in myself, and that's because of a lot of reasons, mostly my own reasons. I can use a lot of things that happened to me in my past as crutches, and I see too much of that in today's movements. And I'll never sit there and say a person should not step up and say, if you've been abused or you've been hurt or somebody's bullied you, by all means draw attention to it and do it before. Don't let it fester. Don't let it eat in you. One of the downsides from my generation and my parents' generation was we kept things to ourselves. We didn't share. We didn't talk about them, and it has its effect on people in ways that some people don't ever see why the person acts the way they do, or why they're always seemingly depressed, and what's the cause. On the other side of that, there's such a thing as being too much. You know, you're accusing people of things that happened 35 years ago, fine, but don't get on the bandwagon just because a bunch of people are making a big statement out of it. And I've seen this in some of these movements, things that started out as good and honest and much needed social awareness things have become absurd of their demands and their requirements and what they think they should get back. And there's this mindset that we need to somehow castrate the male population and demasculate everybody so everybody's exactly a carbon copy, and that's not how humanity works. And if there's a way for Rome to fall apart and burn, we're heading in that direction from a social perspective. We're trying to destroy the identity of half of the population, and at the expense of the other half, whether they realize it or not. It's not a good thing. But like I said, once again, we're not here for that. What I'm here for is talk about wishes. I won't talk about wishes. Major and minor is what they call them now, a minor wish and a major wish. This particular installment from Judges Guild has a little section on wishes, and of all the information I've read over the years in the gaming material for this sort of thing, this is one of the best ones as far as I'm concerned. And when you look at sort through my pile of stuff here at the moment, because as I said, I've been doing some videos and of course some maps I want to do, this is on my list to do soon. Here's my City Stater World Overlord, which is coming soon. And we will be doing that in the near future. And there's 2 more of these that I have yet to do. I have these 2 here to do. And then that's it for my Judges Guild. And I'll be moving on to something else, something probably, as I said, I'm really leaning towards doing my... Okay, kitty. I know you want to do that, but you can't sit on those. She wants to just flop down whatever she wants to flop down, and yes, but you can't sit on those. They bend. The connections for the camera and the microphones stick out from the sides of and if she sits on them, they'll bend them and break them, and then I'll have a lot of problems. You just insist on being up there, that's fine. The cat owns you, you don't own the cat. Is the way it works. Anyway, here we go. This section right here on limited wishes and wishes. Limited wishes can alter the time stream in a very limited way. Physical manifestations are not possible with a limited wish except those derived from alternate choices or reactions to the altered reality. In other words, wishing for treasure is futile and dangerous, but rather because the dragon didn't breathe, the magic item wasn't destroyed. Thus, limited wishes can affect timing, decisions, past, present, or future. Lost opportunities, feelings, ill-spoken words, hasty reactions, and thoughts. Limited wishes cannot affect events over 1 week distance. Limited wishes may not be applied to starred GLs, whatever. I'm going to assume that's general. I don't know. I can't even. Sometimes their acronyms don't always come across. Wishes can be granted yet have repercussions, splash effects for all benefactors. Select the best guideline possible, eliminating categories from the bottom up when not using the spell or other guidelines. Category for determining the most that can be wished for, e.g. a demigod could grant 10,000 gold pieces at a 60% probability, but 0% of 20,000 is wished for. However, repercussions chances still rolled. Curses should be immediately evidenced to link them with the wish. Generally, wishes will not affect the dead as well as spells, especially for that purpose, although later versions of the major wish did allow for that. General guideline for no personal gain, to help others, to pay, receive for physical manifestation, personal gain only, a malicious intent, greed and evidence, magic armor desired, miscellaneous magic desired, a life for 1 day, a life for 6 days, but lose 100% of treasure within 10 miles, only 1 hit point, so on and so forth. Right? So, when we're talking about wishes in the games, in the very early days, Rob Gusterson pointed out in one of his recent videos that he would like to hear from some of us old players and how things worked, how things played out, how our adventures were back in the day. And one of those scenarios that was always problematic, both as a player and as a dungeon master or judge or referee, depending on what game system you played in, was the concept of the wish spell, and the wish item. You know, the Ring of Three Wishes, for example, the genie in the bottle wish kind of scenario. And everybody has those playouts. We play them in our head in the real world. Well, if I had a wish, what would I wish for? And theoretically, they broke them into 2 pieces. One of the problems with the wish spells, especially the major wish spells, was they were game breakers. They could literally alter the entire game line, timeline, the game structure, the character generalization. I could not tell you how many times I've had new players, especially, who've read up on these things as in the spell section or the treasure guide section on these items, and go, oh, well, I would wish myself to be a 50th level, whatever, and they don't give a lot of thought to what that meant. Well, for starters, from a game mechanic, if you do that in my game, you go from 5th level to 50th level. You've just retired your character. Your character is a 50th level superhero demigod that's known throughout the land as the great whatever, but as a playable character, it's no longer playable. It will not function in our campaign, and unless we're running an extremely advanced epic level game, you just retired your character. And if that was your intent, hey, yeah, that was you, yeah, right? Is that your intent too? Yeah, see, this is where she likes to perch most of the time. And if not on me, on Mama too. She does the same to Mama. And or right here on the table where she gaze out the window and flop all over my stuff. So they started mediating things, and I've seen the progression over the years from the various versions of the Dungeons & Dragons rule sets. And to answer the question, why is it always D&D? Why do we always talk D&D? Well, I'm sorry, but this is the bulk of the stuff. And as if you watch Rob Gustafson's videos on his experience with White Book, creating characters and things like that, and he's investing time to do this, you can understand a little better. First off, I love you guys, I love you gals, I appreciate everything you contribute to the game hobby, and the writers, the creators, the players, the designers, the dreamers, every one of you, right? But I'm telling you that every role-playing game today, and I do not care what genre it's in, owes its foundation to first edition, early edition Dungeons & Dragons. The white books, the red books, the blue books, the early editions of AD&D, because that's the truth of the way it worked. They're the ones that came up with the idea and publicized it and made it a marketable entity, TSR. And people like Bob Bedslaw and Mr. Owens, who created these supplements for. These are all stuff that come from the roots of our game system. So if you're a Pathfinder or a Flame Princess fan, or Demigods and Dark Places and stuff like that, awesome. But none of that would exist if these guys hadn't done their homework first, and they got it out there. Now, has it come a long way? Yeah, it's come a long way, and it's diversified immensely, and that's awesome, because I can tell you from being one of those early guys from the early days of buying this stuff and finding that there was such a limited pool, but then almost overnight it became this big pyramid, very few. Now there's massive. There's so much stuff now that you can't possibly have everything. It's just not pliable. So you're going to find people who specialize. They specialize in this genre or that genre. That's their preference. That's their preference for creating and designing it and for playing it. I'm just saying, right? So we're talking wishes. I could wish that I was one of those people who had the foresight when I was 12 to start making stuff like this and trying to get it out there. But we didn't have the social media, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have computers, we didn't have not computers like we do today, we didn't have all the software and the editing equipment. We couldn't do any of this stuff. None of it. So these people that did this stuff really had some chops and some luck. And as a few other people have done some videos on the history of the gaming industry and stuff that tell you that it's been a very choppy and very dog and scorpion development mindset through the years, which is sad too, that so many people have come and gone that got used up and taken advantage of their good nature or they're just the good personality. The good always suffer over the evil. It seems like it isn't always that way, but it seems that way. It's hard for some of us to be extremely positive on everything when the world's full of negativity. It's just so much negativity. What do you do, right? So the limited wish, the concept behind the limited wish is sort of a mulligan, a do-over. I roll my dice, and it comes up, blah, and oh my God, what should have been a great thing turns into a terrible thing, and everybody suffers, and the whole party gets devastated, or what have you. If I have a limited wish ability, whether it's a magic spell or it's a one-shot wonder from a ring or something like that, I could pause the game to the GM, turn to the GM and say, look, I want to take and use up this limited wish to reset this scenario from this point, which is kind of what they're mentioning in here. So if the dragon's pursuing your party, and your party's got this brilliant plan to knock down a pillar that's going to drop a ceiling on the dragon, at least slow the dragon down and give your group a chance to run away, and your two strong men of the party run up to that pillar just as your group's running past it to go do their thing and fail to do their thing and get caught by the dragon. Well, perhaps you can reset that and say, let's try it again. Or if something goes terribly wrong, we can try to pull a mulligan on it, or potentially we can right a wrong in that aspect. If we could go back when I was in my late teens, early 20s, when Microsoft and Apple first started really taking off, I had opportunities to buy stock in those companies back then, but I was a young man who didn't have a lot of money, and I spent my money on drugs and partying at bars on the weekends and this stuff, and that was the lion's share where my money went. I lived with my parents until I was in my 30s, I'm just saying. And even after being married twice, I still lived with my parents, because why should I worry about paying bills? Let them pay bills. See how my mindset was in the wrong place at the time. And the fact that we could just wish for a change. Well, I wish I could be 20 again with the knowledge I have now, and how different my life would be. Oof, how different it would be. I'd have definitely gone into the service. I utterly regret not doing that. I would have invested a little bit of money into these companies that I know that were going to be hugely popular and hugely successful. Of course, Murphy's Law, which is also what they cover in here under the probability factor, is that the more elaborate the wish, the more powerful the more event changing that wish could be, the greater the probability that something doesn't go right. So perhaps I could go back to being 20 and relive my life and do all these different things, but what are the ramifications of that? Well, the odds are I wouldn't have two of my three children. I'm just saying two of my three children wouldn't exist. Probably wouldn't have followed the pursuits that I did to get me where I'm at now. I wouldn't be the person that I am. I would be a completely different person. So the argument is that the timeline changes, and then everything I know now would be irrelevant. I make one major crucial change, and then everything after that is pointless. So I'm still in a line of potential personal fail, because now I'm trying to guide my life based off of a non-existing timeline of events. So I wouldn't know then what I know now. I mean, there's a lot of philosophy stuff in there. It can make your head burst if you let it go. So this is one of the reasons why it's discouraged. Limited wishes are discouraged to be utilized in that such a wide-ranging. That would be considered a major wish. Now, if I'm in the middle of a sword fight and my sword breaks at a crucial point and I almost kill the bad guy, but somehow the bad guy gets away, I could make that limited wish and say, I wish for the bad guy to trip. They give me that mulligan chance to get the bad guy, or perhaps one of my player friends character gets offed by some stupid mistake, or that we made a bad choice. We didn't run over there when they needed the assistance. We chose to continue to fight with this thing over here. We can make that limited wish, which resets the game. Now, a lot of GMs will just reset the game. They'll just think, yeah, this didn't go the way we go. And as a GM, as a player, how many times have you had one of those OF moments where somebody's just throws the dice in the right way and you're just, oh my God, how can that be such an utter fail? Or you're just astounded at something that should be so easy, so simple, goes so wrong so fast. That's the stuff of story. That's the stuff of legend to some degree. This is what makes those moments. It's just like the other way around, where the odds are so against the success of this thing. And I made a point about that. I saw that in somebody else's post, and I read it, and I reprinted it or shared it in Facebook about the guys that were saying, look, the dwarf falls off the cliff, and the GM says, what are you going to do? And the character says, I'm going to grab for the cliff face and try to stop myself, and he fails. And he says, I'm going to try again, and he fails. And then he says, and then the GM says, you got one last chance before you hit the ground. What are you going to do? And the dwarf says, I'm going to flap my arms like mad. And then everybody stops and stares at him. And the GM says, well, okay, make your roll. And then individual rolls and hits the 20, and then turns around and makes a second roll and hits the 20, and in just utter astoundment, everybody's like, oh my God. And the GM sits there with this disbelief on it, says, well, it's the next thing you know, you see the Jakar, the dwarf, flapping his arms like a maniac, start rising up over the edges of the cliff and sets himself down on top of the edge, perfectly safe. That's the sort of thing that's it's just so rare in this, and everything, but it's the story that goes out, and the limited wish gives you sometimes the ability to reset. So if the dwarf had fallen off the cliff and he missed those two tries to grab on and stop his fall, he splatters on the ground, or before he splatters on the ground, the magic user comes up and twists his ring and goes, I wish that blah, a tree grows out of the side of the mountain, or that a ledge appears, or something like that, to stop the dwarf's fall. And lo and behold, we just what would have been an obvious fail and an obvious death to a long-time character is prevented. And that's one of many uses for these things. As a GM myself, I always discourage the use of wishes, period. Whenever possible, I never included rings of wishes and things like that as loot. I always played down the spells, and I've noted, like I said, over the years in the evolution of this stuff, that they've done similar things to that too in the rules. They've tried hard to, I hope that didn't turn that off. Like I said, got this thing, and sometimes you just don't know all this new stuff, right? Trying to figure out how not to use it. This one's got a little thing here, and I start messing with the button. I need my limited wish to go back and fix that problem. So, the limited wish, very tricky, very interesting. The major wish is much harder to control, and I've never been a big fan of it being available, but if you're careful and you're cautious, you can utilize it. The other side of that is, as the GM, especially on the major wishes can be utterly changing, and one of the things I have a habit of is consequence, cause and effect. I want to be the world emperor. Okay, we throw the dice, we follow the parameters of the rule itself. Lo and behold, you find yourself the world emperor. What does that mean? What does that really mean? Well, in some cases, if you really want to be a devious and dark individual for a GM, you can sit there and your character says, you wake up in this plush, grand bedroom with all these servants and caretakers and everything that's so lavish. The sheets they're almost like silk or gossamer silk. They feel like you're floating on air, and it's environmentally controlled, so it's never not too hot, not too cold. They bring you the most immaculate clothes you've ever seen. Your breakfast is the best of the best of the best, and you've got 3 tasters there tasting them to make sure you don't croak. And next thing you know, one of them turns green, the other one turns blue, the third one grabs their neck, and all this occurs just after you took your first bite. You were world emperor for 5 minutes. See, that's not necessarily a good way as a GM. I don't like this. I like having one ear out because I feel like I'm cut off too much. So it makes me fiddle with this stuff too. And I know there's a slight drone in the background, and that's because we got a space heater going on right over there. It is in the 30s out there today. So winter's coming. It's Iowa, it's the Midwest, of course. Winter's coming. Some places got there faster. I heard up north now, especially in western Nebraska yesterday. So there you have it. My thought on wishes and the interesting concepts that they had in the 70s on the idea of the wish. And I wish that you have a good day and a great game. Till next time, game on.